Thank you, and good morning. Uh, what I want to make 4 or 5 points today, and I'm going to prove a number of people wrong who think I go past my time limit. I still do it. First of all, I think the general philosophy and the guidelines, which is the general philosophy of downtown revitalization, is that we need to focus on the street level. That's where everything happens. If you have a 4-story building next to a 1-story building, what people care about, people, not business people, or we're talking about customers now who come to downtown, what they care about is what's happening on the ground floor. So they care less what's happening on the 3rd floor. So that's just the fundamental thing. And the second thing, I think we sometimes get very caught up in our own sort of specialties, whether it's leasing or design. And I'm taking a step back and saying, what does the customer say and feel? And because that's what we have to respond to. And sometimes feeling how they feel is even better than surveys and so on when you ask them, because people answer questions differently than how they feel always, and that's the tricky part. Well, the thing I find is that the customers, for them, is the collective impression of downtown. It's not when they go back and say, when they say, well, I was 4th Street, Berkeley, I had a great time, wonderful shopping area. Then when you ask them, oh, why, let's analyze it, well, half of them will get lost. They don't know why. They just felt good. And then if you show them, or maybe the buildings are very nice, which actually 4th Street doesn't have distinguished buildings. So, or if you ask them, well, did you notice that gas station, the ugly gas station with the fast food? Not really. College and Ashby, it's a wonderful area, high rent area. And I could take you there and show you a number of buildings that are not keeping up with the rest of them. But the point being, it's a collective impression, and in that collective impression, there's, as Craig mentioned, there's a tipping point. And once you reach that, it is forgiving. For people, it's forgiving to have a building that has not been kept up, and so on and so forth. So it's the overall impression that's very important. The second thing I want to emphasize is, and this is the sort of the good news. I mean, this is the first good. All these things are good news. I'm hoping mine is a feel-good kind of presentation. So the good news is that you don't have to say, well, my neighbors are they're not attractive buildings. I don't know if it's worth doing my building. Not true. It's the collective impression, and you need to be part of that tipping point. The second is, a lot of times it's easy for people to understand how to do a new building. It's very straightforward. You say how many square feet I'm going to get, what are the depth, what are the rules in the city about setbacks, and what is it going to cost. For a new building, you can go to, you don't even have to have a design ready. You can go to various contractors, and they can pretty within 10%, they can tell you what it is going to cost. I could tell you that in half an hour, knowing the constraints of the site. You want a 3-story building, you want this and that. Renovation or revitalizing is such a broad territory. I think if somebody gives you that number, they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. It's much more elusive. So I think a lot of times people facade improvements don't happen, even when there are funds available from the city, is because people don't know what should they do, first of all, because they can't see past what they're looking at their building. They cannot see the potential. And they need to be artists to be that. Even if they see it, they don't understand how to go about it. Where do I start from? And thirdly, when do I do it? I have 2 tenants, I have 3 spaces, the 2 tenants are in business. I don't want to hurt their business by tearing up the facade. But then I have a 3rd space that is vacant, and in order to attract tenants, I need to do something. So they kind of caught, and that's when paralysis sets in. So the good news is that's what we are here for, to help you. And as Craig said, it's not always, we'll be very straightforward and say, well, given your situation here, I don't think you should spend more than this. So it's not always that more you spend, the better. You have to be smart about how you spend the money. And smart in terms of you can be incremental, you can do a lot of things. But that's what we are here for, is to help. And each one is different. You cannot have rules like you have a new building where you say it's going to cost $150 a square foot. Of that, 20% is foundations, another 20% is structure, another 20% is the framing, roof is this percentage. It's all formula. And the only discretion is essentially whether you're using fancy materials on the outside or stucco. That's a narrow range. In remodeling, that doesn't happen. And so I think that help is very important. Some buildings don't need more than just a coat of paint and an awning. And I think when I look at that, to me, it seems a shame that that person is not taking advantage of the program or doing it on their own, because it takes so little for them to shine. And so that's the third good news. The other is, unlike a new building, that you have to have a certain minimum amount of money, even to do a stucco building. You have to have more if you want to do fancier materials, but you have to have a certain minimum. You cannot say, okay, my budget is 3/4 of that, so I'm going to keep the same size building, but I'm going to do 3/4 of it. I mean, I'm not going to cover the whole roof, I'm going to cover partial roof. You can't do that. So there's a finite. Good news about remodeling is, there is no finite. There's no code requirement that if you paint your building, you have to upgrade the structure. There are some requirements if you do too much beyond a certain point, but if you stay below that, every bit helps. So I think that's very important, that it's actually easier to do a facade remodel, planned properly, within the budget than a new building. Because in the new building, if you didn't do the estimating right, and you're already 3/4 finished, you have very little to value engineer or leave out. Are you going to not landscape it? And that's a shame, because we all know when houses are sold and people go to the Sunday open houses, the brokers will tell you that the most important thing you can do in selling a house is buy a couple of $100 worth of mulch and put it in the front, in between your dead plants. And that's okay too. And it actually makes the dead plants look okay in selling the house. So imagine so it's a shame not to have the $200 to finish the building. In facade remodel, I think it's easier if you plan properly. And finally, I'm going to go back and wrap my comments, is that every bit helps in a downtown. Because people it's not, all right, well, I don't have good neighbors, or I'm this far. Every bit helps, meaning that people are looking, customers are looking, when they come for dining or buying a shoe or something, they're looking to do other things, provided you make them, it's easy for them to get to the other things. And so here, the stepping stone aspect of downtown is very important. So if you have a dead block in between two very alive, happening blocks, well, that's a missing stepping stone, like in a garden. You will not go, you will turn back. So every store can help in creating that sort of the next stepping stone. So the interdependence, I think, is very important. And what I found in my experience is that, like in many things in life, there are leaders and then there are followers. We need a few leaders who see the vision, and when they do it, then the neighbor who was perhaps not excited about remodeling at all will see the light and say, oh, I think I'm ready too. We've seen that in a lot of communities. So if you cannot always convince people by telling them what it could be, but you can certainly convince them by showing them what it is. So I think I'll wrap that up. It's a lot about TLC, lots of different aspects, and we're here to help.